32-bit games on your PC, 16-bit games on your PC, and 8-bit games on your PC. It's April 1994, and this is Yesterzine. It's that time again. Barely 12 months after it was last the holy month of DOSCember, it's here again. For the first DOSCember in 4 years, we return to the later DOS era. Numbers fans will have already noted that 94 is one less than 95, and the new Windows was on the horizon. Its existence is public knowledge, and indeed had Microsoft followed their original plans, Panther would already have been released, delivering most of what we'd see in 95. It would have run on top of an enhanced MS-DOS originally known as Jaguar. It's a weird coincidence that Microsoft and Atari were simultaneously using the same codenames for their attempts to break the next generation of their respective markets. It's perhaps even less of a surprise that of the 4 products concerned, only one was released in anything like its originally conceived form, and that one essentially bankrupted the company. Don't worry though, Atari were pretty much used to it at this point. It does mean though, as we join the ever-present PC Gamer right back with their 5th issue in April 94, we're in the last great era of DOS-first gaming. Version 6.21 is current, hastily rushed out to replace 6.20 when Microsoft were legally required to stop distributing its innovative double-spaced disk compression system. The last ever standalone release of MS-DOS was only 2 months away, 6.22 adding a system called Drive Space that was totally not double space in an unconvincing top hat and moustache, despite doing exactly the same thing and being 100% compatible with it. CD-ROM 2 is here, but not mainstream. With PC Gamer yet to launch their CD Gamer cover disc, we get a pair of standard floppies, each containing a single demo. Both are interesting, even though the game series involved have sharply contrasting longevity. We'll play both. Elsewhere, PC Gamer have decided on the top 50 games of all time, and that's going to make interesting reading as we hit the point the PC is now definitively more capable than the classic 16 and 32-bit home computers of the nation, but is still at least partially reliant on their developers for its game releases. Is our winner an Amiga port, a native PC title, an import from an America that never quite embraced post 8-bit wedge boxes the same way, or even a console-sourced wildcard? Stick around and find out. And finally, the rise of PC gaming means the rise of shovelware, as High-Tech pinned their PC hopes on a port of a 2-year-old game about which the original reviewer said, "Stand playing this for more than 5 minutes and you're sad." I promised to give it at least 6. First though, in this late DOS pre-95 birth of CD, next generation looming world. What's occurring? PC Gamer in this era is edited by Gary Witter, and why you know him might be a good age metric for the viewership. For me, he's a writer and later editor on Ace and The One for Amiga. For others, he's this bloke who took over from launch editor Matt Bealby. For the Americans, he's one of the very early editors of PC Gamer 2, but it's their version after he moved to the US. He'd later become first a comic book writer with the series Death Jr., and eventually a successful screenwriter on the Walking Dead and Star Wars films. He uses the near impossible luxury of a full-page editor's letter to highlight that top 50 countdown we'll reach soon, but also to boast of over 50,000 sales of the launch issue. That's impossible now, but merely pretty good then. Systemag Amiga format was selling close to 3 times that, albeit with 5 years of history. Then again, PC Gamer is still published as of 2025, and you can't say that of... Okay, but that was Amiga format's first issue in 25 years. The previous one, in May 2000, said it was the last issue for the foreseeable future. They weren't kidding. The PC Gamer news too is looking into the future because their main story is the forthcoming CD-ROM adventure, Myst. They've given it due prominence, but have not quite realised how much the game ultimately would end up doing for CD adoption, despite the original version looking old as soon as the PlayStation era begun. It's a measure of Myst's impact that, despite that, it was still successfully released on the console. And if you want any illustration of how in flux things were, what's the second most important game of the month? An innovative 3D driving sim. A full talkie CD-ROM epic of a point-and-click adventure? An intricately detailed texture-mapped flight simulator? Nope, it's a conversion of a year-old Amiga game that after Myst suddenly looks like it's from the Dark Ages. Which isn't to say the Chaos Engine is in any way a bad game, but it's at least 2 generations behind Myst, and you'll really see this with the one platform that is all generations at once. The news section sells it too. EA feel they have to use CDs, so have tried to do so with their old games. Shadowcaster is getting speech, Space Hulk is getting some new levels, Syndicate in comparison almost involves actual effort, with the expansion bundled in plus both the advantages from the other two. The other game on the page though? Player Manager, a mildly warmed over copy of a 5-year-old top-down football game with a half-assed management mode bolted on the side. It made sense in 1990 when it was released on the Amiga just a year after the original, but by 1994 we've got sensible World of Soccer doing the whole thing a lot better, and we're months from the first FIFA game. We know this because it's mentioned on the same double-page spread. All of which illustrates how interesting this top 50 is going to be. Just prior to Win95, the basic platform has been stable since 1982, x86 on DOS. Sure, the computers have got a lot quicker, sure your 1982 PC isn't going to run the modern titles, but fundamentally the same code's going to work. Well, except in those rare cases where someone both forgot to set a maximum frame rate, but also syncs the real-time clock to the frame rate. The PC also doesn't have any licensing requirements to release a game and is popular in most English-speaking nations, so there's going to be theoretically unparalleled diversity. You might even get a game from an obscure sport no one understands, which is why the majority of its runtime is people standing around trying to work out what the bloody hell is going on. On an unrelated note, Game 50 is American football game Unnecessary Roughness. No Madden, you'll notice. While the Amiga got a version of the original, we wouldn't see a PC version until 96. Our old friend Shadowcaster makes an appearance, praised for making the whole RPG thing simpler and more accessible, even getting compared to Wolfenstein in some respects. PC Gamer say it may not be the future, but I think they're underselling it. Games like the later Fallouts and Outer Worlds absolutely follow these kind of templates, and you could argue that the more shoot-em-up focused games like Borderlands learn some lessons from the other direction. One noted to come back to, maybe next December. Sports, and they've chosen PGA Tour as their only golf game. They think it controversial. By 1994, I don't. PGA Tour had become the default choice and would largely remain so for a decade. John Hare of Sensible though, the first dev to weigh in, chooses the classic leaderboard instead. Also of note, in a list that doesn't have Microprose's Railroad Tycoon, they have picked the slightly more obscure Japanese origin cult classic A-Train instead. The system requirements are a clue here, a pair that are happy on a 286, 2 for a 386, 1 for a 486, and in the entire top 50, nothing is going to recommend the already 2-year-old Pentium to run well. Shadowcaster is unsurprisingly your most advanced game, but all the other 3 could have been Amiga games, and only the Amiga not being such a thing in America stopped any of them being. Similar story on page 2. D-Generation and WizKid are classic Amiga games, with again the decline of the format being the only reason they didn't get Star Trek sequel Judgement rights, whose engine mate of an original 25th anniversary was on the format. The lack of interest from American publishers accounts for the Miggy missing NHL for another few years. The exception is Stunt Island, again the only one on the page needing a 486 and another one I've not played, but sounds interesting. Page 3 though is the beginning of what I can only describe as the good shit. Due respect for one of my favourites in Fury of the Furries, an innovative puzzle platformer released in some markets and formats inexplicably as a Pac-Man game. Indianapolis 500, one of the early Serious Sims and a game with absurd speed on its recommended 386 PCs. Strike Commander, a mostly unknown Wing Commander spin-off set more on Earth, which I've played a lot more of than any of the original series. The CD version is our first game to want the fancy 4860X, but it makes use of it. PC Gamer though described their self-proclaimed 36th greatest game of all time as didn't live up to expectations. Amiga Power admitted with their list sometimes the person who wrote the entry did not vote for it, and it sounds like much the same happened here, although they do admit the CD version with full speech and an expansion pack improves things. Ultima 7 no one is going to debate either, although releasing two versions 3 months apart, both for premium prices, and indeed charging slightly more for the later one would get a reaction these days, wouldn't it? Meanwhile, Archer McLean's snooker game shows why he was a programming genius. Given that was always a hallmark of his games, it's interesting he flags superb game but not technical marvel The Secret of Monkey Island as the greatest of all time. Monkey Island itself next, a game whose biggest problem is pretty much that a better follow-up exists. Same problem of course for Wolfenstein 3D, a marvel at the time, but this is a few months after Doom's release. PC gamers say the same about Another World 2, considering Flashback a sequel. Another World gets revenge here. Its 20th anniversary rework is considerably better than anything anyone has done with the Flashback name in the last 30 years. Lastly on the page, Alone in the Dark. At this point, what we had before Resident Evil came along. And sadly, with the last two attempts to make games under that name, we have Resident Evil at home. Alone in the Dark probably deserved more. The series was effectively dead the second Capcom's game emerged, with its 32-bit graphics and acting. Our Celebrity Games endorsement this page comes from the legend Pratchett himself. He's a Wing Commander fan, but suspects the still recent Doom may grow on him. You may not have realised Sir Terrier's a proper gamer, but he was into them enough to contribute to Elder Scrolls mods. He would ultimately consider Thief 2 from 2000 as his favourite game of all time. His daughter Rihanna is now an accomplished video game writer herself, best known for the 2010s Tomb Raider games. The top half approaches, and the era schizophrenia in this list hasn't changed. Flight Sims did seem to be leading the charge for taking all the power a PC could handle in this era. Sim fans have always been willing to spend. Here, they're represented by TFX, an ultra-modern flight sim needing an ultra-modern PC. 2 years after this, we got it free with a new Pentium 200, and it wasn't entirely perfect even on that. Conversely, right next to it on the list is Micro Machines, a game released on PC slightly after TFX, but whose origins are on the Nintendo Entertainment System, which is basically a Diet Sega Master System. The 3D PC only in the UK Ultima Underworld sits next to Speedball 2, another game available on all the best 8-bit games consoles. That's probably more famous as an Amiga game though, much like the daddy of sim games, Formula 1 Grand Prix. For the layman, it's worth pausing here to say Formula 1 Grand Prix is basically the motor racing fans' FIFA, but without any of FIFA's downsides. It was the first F1 game to do a full field of the real drivers, if you edited the obvious fake names. It's the first with every single track of the year in a form you would recognise. It did all the sessions, it did decent damage, it did full-length races and championships, and it's better on PC. Sorry Amiga owners, but if you liked your frames to have what is legally describable as a rate, you either needed a future Amiga, or you needed a PC. Elite creator David Braben pops up to say he doesn't like video games. Thanks Dave. The top half beckons us with another selection of multi-era bangers, also the name of your mum's Magic Mike tribute act. Lemmings sits next to the not dissimilar but much less famous Sid and Al's Incredible Toons. Westwood Studios, most famous for the Command & Conquer series, have the game that taught them how to make those. Dune 2 sat right next to Lands of Lore, an expansive RPG they also wrote. Sandwiched by this is a game a 15-year-old YouTuber would probably call the predecessor to Kerbal Space Program, about 0.001 seconds before I block them.
Always hated that guy.
It's not the worst description though. Buzz Aldrin's Race into Space is a grand strategy game following the race to be the first to land on a set at Pinewood Studios. It's a realistic simulation of trying to put together a space mission, not least because, costing £50 in 1993, you could probably do it for real for that price with inflation. We've absolutely run out of real gaming celebrities, by the way. We're down to Mark Ramshaw, former Amiga and Sega Power editor, who likes Doom, and on the next page, Phil South, also a magazine editor of distinction. He's picking MechWarrior, by the way. Ask him about it at next year's Crash Live. Chessmaster is one of the two really classic chess series, along with Battle Chess. It's also one where the marketing department have been on the good drugs, as evidenced by this version somehow going under the name Chessmaster 4000 Turbo. The entire initial run of Chessmaster games counts up in 1000s for some reason, but I've no idea where they got Turbo from. or for one remastered release, somehow being called the Fidelity Chessmaster 2100, or releasing a Game Boy version as the new Chessmaster. Villain of the month, by the way, is whoever was tasked with handling the sequel to Chessmaster 9000 and went with Chessmaster 10th Edition, which was both a buzzkill of a name for the series and by that point not even accurate. Pinball Fantasies sits 19th, still the greatest pinball game of all time, including any of the others in the same series and indeed actual pinball. Flashback appears here too, well above Another World. A brave call, and for me, the wrong one. All the above, of course, are things that could, and in many cases did run on a base Amiga. The box claimed this of Frontier too, but as Top Human being the goldfish once demonstrated to me at the Centre for Computing History, that's only legally true. Incidentally, the problem PC Gamer have with it is poor presentation, which more than possibly anything else in this entire list is an indication of how much PCs were starting to stretch away from the prevailing 16-bit machines at this point. Same too for Subwar 2050, Microprose's advanced submarine sequel to Silent Service, which needs a 32-bit Amiga. Not that Amiga Action would know, as they famously reviewed the PC version. As we work towards the big guns, the pattern continues. Two of LucasArts' finest graphic adventures in Day of the Tentacle and Indiana Jones and the Fate of Atlantis. Only the latter made it to Amiga, and it had more discs than an international frisbee tournament. Two flight sims in Tornado and Evasive Action. Only the former made it to Amiga.
There really are a lot of flight sims on this list.
The remaining game is Bullfrog Syndicate, and as the Week in Retro host Dave recently gently corrected me, this was Bullfrog's first game with PC as the lead platform. The times, they are a-changin'. It's interesting to see how things were perceived in near hindsight though, because the appearance of yet another LucasArts adventure on the next page with Sam and Max Hit the Road made me realise we have seen basically their entire 90s output in this list, and yes, the obvious one missing so far is about to appear. What we haven't seen though, anywhere, is a single one by Sierra Online. The only Sierra game in the entire top 50 is Sid and Al, although inexplicably PC Gamer managed to credit Dune 2 to them rather than Virgin, and Indiana Jones to them rather than US Gold or LucasArts itself, depending on territory. These days, LucasArts and Sierra are considered near equal titans of point-and-click gaming, but in 1994, at the end of both their golden eras, there's only one clear winner, at least according to PC Gamer. You wouldn't perhaps expect to see board game tie-in sequel to another board game tie-in, Space Hulk, make the top 10, but Space Hulk is effort rewarded, taking the board game setting and general mechanics but not wedding itself to turn-based systems or other limitations of cardboard. Of course, PC Gamer are saying all other board game conversions are crap, while forgetting they'd just put another one of them in the top 15 because chess is a board game, goddammit. Less surprising, best driving simulation of the time, IndyCar Racing, makes the top 10. IndyCar was less popular than F1 then as now, albeit attracting attention in 1993 for the presence of World Charisma champion Nigel Mansell. This possibly meant the realism aspect of IndyCar racing for some was lost, but other than some of the tracks being in an expansion pack and one missing entirely thanks to licensing bollocks, everything I said about F1 GP applies here but with better texture mapping. Equally for Alone in the Dark 2, read the first entry and append a 2. The entry mentions it's the first of 3 sequels in the top 10. It's actually 4. 2 of the 3 remaining are on the next page, in Ultima Underworld 2, which apparently recommends a 286 when the first game needed a 386, another of the surprising number of typos in this feature. Then, and you knew this was coming, Secret of Monkey Island 2, the first game this show ever covered and still one of the best. If you press me really, really hard, then I'm picking Day of the Tentacle as LucasArts' greatest, but this is coming home straight behind it. Another one that's best played on PC just because of the 12 discs it'll take you to play it on a normal Amiga. Lastly on the page, no argument for Microprose's longest running series, even if it's not been Microprose's for a couple of decades. Civilization, which PC Gamer curiously forget to mention is a board game conversion at heart, is probably the god game. When looking at the original, this Windows refresh with a VGA colour palette is probably your way to play it. And so, the big guns. Number 3, Doom. The biggest tribute I can possibly give Doom, even in its first year, is that a decent number of you will be surprised to see it this low. It's probably Doom more than any other that caught the eye as the game that ended the 16-bit era. This couldn't be done on an Amiga, although Cthulhu knows many have tried. It couldn't be done on a Mega Drive or a SNES without a very beefy custom chip to help out. Versions would come to the early 32-bit consoles of course, although even then there were screw-ups. The 3DO version especially is a good story. The recently departed Rebecca Heinemann joined the project already well underway to find out that A, it wasn't, B, the game was due in 2 months, and C, she had access to absolutely none of the original code in order to port it. Becky managed to get hold of both PC and Jaguar code direct from id, presumably because her reputation allowed her to just call and ask for it. But the rest is just her doing her level best, and another chance for the 3DO to make an impact was lost. The host game though, its impact cannot be denied, and can it run Doom remains an ongoing internet joke to this day, as sadly are several of the sequels. In other surprises, LucasArts' highest rated title isn't an adventure. Another PC exclusive, X-Wing makes the list while Wing Commander doesn't, and that's certainly a call. X-Wing again had impact, another nail in the coffin of the independent computer industry and the 16-bit era in general. So number 1. Can you guess it? If you're paying attention, you've noticed a famous series so far missing. You'll have counted and realised it's going to be a sequel. And I'll tell you too, it's also a very new game that was released on an Amiga, but in a version described optimistically online as barely playable.
Last chance.
SimCity 2000. The PC is going to PC. Your PC users of this era were still of the mouse-played thinking game ilk in the main, and little did it better. This is still probably the best SimCity. The later ones got more complex without really justifying it, and the less said about the last one the better. It took until Cities Skylines 20 years later for SimCity 2000 to be beaten as a straight urban city builder, and even then they buggered up the sequel to that. It's also a PC game. The best version of the original is the SNES one, no question. It came along later, and Nintendo thought about how to do it. Put in beautiful music, tutorials, and even Bowser as Godzilla. Optimistically, there is a SimCity 2000 port for SNES. It's, well, barely playable if we're honest, as much to do with screen resolution as the technical issues of getting this game running on a 3MHz CPU. Which gives us an opportunity for a Yesterzine trivia question. Without looking, there's a third SimCity game on SNES. Do you know what it is? The answer at the end of the episode. PC Gamer has kept doing these, the latest top 100 as recently as October 2025. Just one game has stood the test of 32 years, and you probably already know it's Doom, which just misses out on the top 10. Smattering of sequels too, in Sid Meier's Alpha Centauri. Oh, and Kerbal Space Program. It's weird to type this for the first time in the 84th. Bloody hell. 84th episode of a series about gaming magazines and cover discs, but the playable demo has largely gone out of favour in 2025. Cover discs, of course, have been dead as a regular thing since about 2011, when our very own host magazine PC Gamer mounted its last. This was covered on this channel, of course, an episode which required me to track down a physical copy of said disc since no one had actually archived it. Virtual cover discs were a thing for a while, PC Gamer tried them for one, and downloadable demos have a sporadic existence. In the main on consoles they're not really demos though, they're just the ability to play the full game for an hour or so instead. Even then, Sony likes to gate them behind a subscription that'll probably give you the full game anyway a few months later. On PC they're equally dead for the AAA titles, although the indies, often people who remember the golden era anyway, produce proper demos, with Steam's Nextfest being basically the last remaining bastion. Which led me to consider a question for the first time in some time, and it's one we can answer here. Back in the day, how big was a demo? How much game did you get to decide whether it was worth spending your $39.99 or $44.99 on? I mention those two prices specifically because this issue of PC Gamer has 2 floppy disks on the cover, and those are the prices of the full games. They're both Microprose games too, one rather more famous than the other. So for viewer retention reasons, let's start with the less famous. Microprose in the 90s were really famous for 3 things. Their Tycoon games, their simulator games, and their grand strategy games. We'll see the start of one of their most famous series in a minute in fact, but what they weren't famous for were their point-and-click adventures. A fact that only occurred to me after the recent release by the newly resurrected Microprose of Let Bygones Be Bygones. But they did manage a few back in the day. Rex Nebula, Return of the Phantom, and this, our covetous demo, Dragonsphere. The immediate plot is classic generic fantasy in a way that immediately makes you think this game wants to be King's Quest. Mighty wizard versus evil sorcerer. Santa Claus having one of his cooler days. A big castle on a precarious hill complete with an ill-advised waterfall. That the sorcerer is defeated, albeit temporarily by a cloud-based system, is probably the biggest fantasy in the game. These days it'd probably be AI powered and hand the sorcerer the keys to the castle, a king-seeking rocket and a bucket of success-flavoured popcorn. The game portion opens in a market just outside the castle where it quickly turns out you're the king because of course you are. We walk around discovering the various factions that'll be in this game. The shapeshifter tries to get you to visit the country and discover how the other 99% lives. Like any good king, you immediately promise to do so with absolutely no intention of ever lowering yourself to such a journey. Clearly they're going to be key to the following plot. As allies, foes, or a laboured analogy for systemic racism? Who knows? Speaking of well signposted keys, the well mentions it's fed by a stream, just upstream from the exit from the dungeon's cell. If that's not the solution to a later puzzle involving dropping something down here to deliver to the person in the cells, then I've never played a point and click. You repeat your kingly promise to give a shit with the nice man from the desert. DOSCember is specifically there to complain you've never visited in fact. To be fair, this sounds like a dangerous journey, the kind you might undertake in Act 3 for instance, when you need the information from their shamans about the important portents they've discovered. That's the market largely dealt with, other than a quick conversation with the local fairy who insists on calling you a fair one as a substitute for having some sort of personality. He does not respect fair ones because you can't take a joke. He also doesn't respect self-identity, so obviously we immediately hate them. Nonetheless, you are warned you must see the Butterfly King first. So that's Act 1 sorted. We've solved this entire game already. Which is lucky because we're about to hit the first demo gate. The road to the east is blocked by plot armour, so we take a look into the castle where we have a quick conversation with your almost certainly not going to betray you brother, who is totally non-suspiciously sitting in your favourite throne and casually threatening you. He also implies, nod nod wink wink, that you might find yourself locked in your own dungeon. He buggers off into his chambers and or scheming area, which is also not available in the demo, neither is the other exit. We take a look around, but this is the extent of it really, so we're left to ponder how useful a demo this is. It's done a good job of establishing the base plot and the major characters, but it's not actually had a single puzzle in it, which sounds like a slight downside. As a last resort, we jump down the well, which ends roughly as well as we'd expect, at which point we're teleported back up. Out of curiosity, I boot the full game to find out if this is how it handles death. The game was released on floppy, but this is the partially voiced CD version here. It turns out the demo is well customised. It cuts the intro down to just the basics, and in the full game you'll actually have the conversation with your brother first before you go outside. The well section is marginally expanded too, with a scream, crunch and a text box making it clear you actually died. But the game is friendly and puts you back to before you made your fatal mistake with the minimum of fuss, and without you having to hope you saved in the last 3 hours like in most Sierra games. I'm joking of course, you'd never go 3 hours between dying in any Sierra game. We don't have time here for a full evaluation, but this seems like a reasonable attempt at a King's Quest, and reviews are largely positive without mentioning any particular insanity to the puzzles. The PC Gamer one is a very solid 80, mentioning only that it suffers from sticking a little too close to the formula, but praising the existence of a novice mode that gives you a little more help. If you've played all the King's Quests to death, and many, many more deaths, then this might be worth a look, which is lucky, because if so, this CD version is available on GOG for under $5. A full evaluation proves tricky for entirely different reasons with our other disc, UFO Enemy Unknown, a game that begins the series called, and which itself was known in some regions, as XCOM. UFO and/or XCOM is a strategy game where aliens have invaded and you have to manage the resources of several governments to contain the situation, and then go on turn-based missions where the game will lie to you repeatedly about the chances of any shot actually hitting anything. The demo starts with an explanatory intro in this regard and skips most of the whole base and squad setup, giving you a group of PC gamer writers as a predefined, quite late game team. It does mean you get some of the later kick-ass weaponry and armour, but as you'll soon see, it also means that the enemies are harder than a diamond pit fighter and will one-shot your best people. It's a simple mission. You have to walk out of your ship, shoot some aliens in their stupid face, and presumably escape. This at least allows me to spot some differences from the modern XCOM games. Most notably that rather than being 2 actions a turn, there's a system where they cost an amount of time points. Overwatch is automatic if you have enough points left, but the demo doesn't implement this. The other major change is you can only see in the direction you are facing, and turning to look around costs those time points. Firing also seems to have a fixed accuracy no matter where the target is. This would all matter if the demo worked, and I fully accept this one could be DOSBox's fault, but there are 2 important problems. First, scrolling. To scroll in these older games, you move to the edge of the screen and click. On this version, in this circumstance, this propels you to the other side of the map instantly. More importantly, twice I got players teleported and trapped on the other side of the map so I could never finish the demo. Is it a good demo? If it worked for you, then probably, although I don't think I'd choose a late game mission just for the difficulty. There's some more screens on the way out as well. So how long is a demo? Well, about 20 minutes for both these, especially if you really poke around in Dragonsphere, but that does mean your cover discs have a lifetime of an hour tops. Is that worth the couple of quid more than a discless magazine of the time? I'm not sure. Speaking of not worth it, we need to touch on one more item. We've seen the future with games like Myst and Doom. We've seen the present in games like Monkey Island and UFO that saw versions on the Amiga and the like. But the PC back then was still catching up, and possibly for the first time, families and children, rather than just their serious business 80s guys owners, were actively using them as gaming machines. So there were games coming across you might not expect from places you wish they hadn't. This is Barbie, a NES game by High-Tech Expressions. It's come across to the PC almost entirely verbatim in that this has been the PC version the whole time and you didn't question it being NES for a second. Our friends at Enforce gave it 34% and said, don't even think about it, and that if you can stand playing it for more than 5 minutes, you're sad. That was 18 months ago. High-Tech have now decided it needs to be on PC. PC Gamer's view on the subject is best expressed in their review score of 12%. You will have the perfectly sensible query as to why you're hearing no sound. You are hearing no sound because this game does not support a sound card. I've had the beeps muted until now, but we get into the game and here they are. Barbie is at its heart a platformer. Traverse the levels, avoid enough of the enemies and solve the worst puzzles in history by throwing either a bow, a diamond or a heart at them. For instance, after some experimentation I discovered that this wall can be bypassed by throwing a diamond at what I'm fairly certain is a puffin. Once done, in theory you can jump on him and ride him over the wall. In practice, it'll take you a while to realise that because the collision detection for this newly created platform is dodgy at best. And basically that's it. Barbie gave you the rundown on the levels in the intro but didn't explain how sluggish the game is, how bad the scrolling is, and how the actual control is a step behind the now decade-old Manic Miner on the Spectrum. A game I could argue probably looks better than this beyond the large main sprite. It's 12%. It's absolutely 12%. They said if you play it more than 5 minutes you're sad, and I've given it at least double that. It'd not be a good game in 1988, and Enforce's 34% proves that. On a PC that had Myst, or more to the point, Jazz Jackrabbit, this is comical. They clearly meant you to buy it for your 6-year-old niece, but she deserves better than this. And thankfully, as the new era of Windows 95 loomed on the horizon, the PC usually delivered it too. On the back page, returning for the 4th year is Sub 5000 TV. Sub 5000 is the Big Red Arrow Club's feel-good, all-day TV channel-style playlist of lovely YouTube videos, adverts and shorts. If this holiday season leaves you needing something to escape the world in company with, or simply recover in front of, then tune in to the playlist on this very channel and relax. This year's lineup features over 30 of your new favourite channels with their most upbeat videos that do not mention any major holiday, and goes live on this channel on the morning of the 25th of December for let's say no particular reason. Tune in and tune out. We're all here for you. And come 2026, I'll still be here for you as I dive into a rarity for this channel. What rarity? Turn up on the last Friday in January and you'll find out. Oh, and the trivia question. The 3 NES SimCities are SimCity, SimCity 2000, and SimCity Junior, a kid-focused version only released on the machine in Japan, but on computers elsewhere as SimTown. Doodles.